Hey everyone, today we're going to be comparing sheetrock and plaster, the pros and cons. Then we're going to put a blowtorch behind the two and see how fast they can put up with each other. Plaster and the inside of sheetrock are very similar products. This lath board, I could not believe how expensive this was today. Sheetrock is super cheap, while this stuff, just this lumber here, without doing the work or labor, this little bit of lumber costs more than 2 entire 4x8 sheets of sheetrock. That's one of the reasons nobody uses it anymore. It's very labor intensive and expensive. They spend a lot of time smoothing it out, letting it dry up, then they'll put a few more coats on here, mixing stuff into it, waiting a week, then painting it. It's a real pain in the butt, very labor intensive, so most people go over to this. But on the other hand, it adds tons of structural strength to your building. All right, those are nice strong keys now. From the other side, you can clearly see where the lath boards are. That's why we're gonna let this set up and put another coat on it. Then we're gonna leave an entire week to dry. Check it out, we got a friend. Sorry about that. We got an air compressor unloading. All right, everybody, it's been about 1 week of the plaster of Paris drying. I had a carpenter I know give me some tips on how to do this because I've never done this before, and he thought this may be a cool experiment because he's never seen anyone else do this. Basically, today we're going to put a blowtorch on the back side of these walls, the plaster of Paris wall and the sheetrock wall. If your house is 1960s or newer, chances are you have this, unless you spent the extra money to do this. Older houses should have plaster walls, and this is what the back side of it looks like. This is called lath wood. These days it's pretty expensive, that's why everyone goes with sheetrock. This wall here, just the lath boards in a room, are going to cost a few times this. Then you got to do the plaster, which again is really expensive. A bag of plaster is like the same price as a sheet of this, but it doesn't go nearly as far. Anyways, the back side of plaster is supposed to have these keys. You're supposed to space the lath board enough so when you're applying it, it sticks through and expands. This is what holds the plaster to the wall, because plaster does not stick well to wood. It's this key that holds it. Up here, I didn't quite do it right. And in real life, this would cause cracking on that side of the wall eventually. If you live in an older building with plaster and you have cracks on your wall or ceiling, this is probably what it looks like on the back side. Traffic driving by, even if you don't notice it, it's shaking your house. Walking around, kids playing, anything going on in your house is causing vibrations that will eventually cause it to fail if it doesn't look like this. These are perfect down here. And that is pretty tedious to fix. Up here, you see how it's already starting to separate from the lath board? The way to fix this is you'd have to drill holes occasionally. You'd have to get a caulking gun with construction adhesive, squirt it into the holes until it starts coming out. Then you take a sheetrock screw with a big washer and you tighten it up, just snug it up a little bit, and when it hardens, you remove the screws and then you finish the side again. And that's how you get cracking to stop on a plaster wall. While with sheetrock, you could just add some more screws, because sheetrock, you can nail anything you want into it to hang up on the wall. Plaster, on the other hand, you must drill a pilot hole, because plaster is really hard and it cracks. If you try to nail into this to hang up a picture, you're probably going to crack the wall. You got to use at least a screw where the end of it looks like a drill bit. That would probably be the easiest way to do it, or you got to drill a pilot hole. As an electrical worker, This makes my job a lot easier because I can simply cut this official wire down to a brand new box. On the other hand, this, if you're not extremely careful, you're gonna crack around where you're cut, because if I start cutting here, these lath boards are now unsupported, and that could cause cracking in the future if I don't properly and reinforce that. Now, newer houses tend to have mold problems, while ancient houses don't, because this cardboard on the back of the sheetrock in a damp environment, like a bathroom or kitchen or attic, or basically any ceiling from the attic, can grow mold. And on the other side, you'll start seeing dark staining. Now, you can always buy purple board, which actually works perfect. It's mold proof, but that's a newer invention. Houses up to like the early 2000s would typically have this in a bathroom, and it would be a mold nightmare later on. We now solve that with purple board. This here, the other side of it, if you saw, it's green board, which can still grow mold. It's better than regular, but it still grows mold. And as you see, the back side of it is exactly the same, where mold would tend to grow. Now, this is wood. Wood, yes, can grow mold, but it won't grow through to the other side, and this is inert, what's actually covering it. It'll never come through. This, if mold grows on this, the roots can go all the way through this fake man-made stuff. Now, wood, it can only grow on the surface. That's why if you have mold mitigation done at your house and they find mold on sheetrock, you got to remove 3 feet around it. Now, this, any kind of wood, furniture, that kind of stuff, it can be sprayed and treated. Here comes the part of the video. People are going to complain that this is not a fair comparison, but honestly, there is really no way to make this completely fair. First thing, an older house is not going to have brand new lath wood that probably still has some of its moisture in it. If this was an older building, this would be all faded. They'd be gray now, all dirty. And also, on the other hand, 100 years ago, they would mix things in. Barbershop hair, animal hair, crushed up oyster shells, all kinds of things. Asbestos, to help hold the stuff together and give it structural strength. They'd add all kinds of fibers to it. This, I did a few layers. First layer is just plain plaster of Paris. Second layer was to get it smoother, because the first layer, you're going to see where the wood is. You got to let it harden for like 20 minutes and set up. Then you do a second coat. Then your third coat, you mix things into it so it smooths over really nice, prepared for paint. This has been drying 1 week. Today, there is a bit of humidity out. I know this is perfectly dry, but if I feel it to the touch, I don't think it's damp. It just feels really cold. So I think houses with this stuff actually would probably stay colder, because this feels room temperature. This feels like freezing, like concrete. That's kind of basically what it is. Also, typically in a house, it'll be like this. There'll be a really thin layer of plaster. This, I didn't smooth it out perfectly, because it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, it's my first time. I've never actually done this before. I think I did a pretty good job in the center here, my first time. But typically, it's going to be pretty thin. It'll be a lot thinner than the wood. But the thicker you do it, the more it'll hold up over time. And even in modern buildings now, some people who have the money will do plaster of Paris. They'll do a coat like this. Then they'll put a metal screening over it. Then they'll even put another coat, and that screen gives it so much structural strength that they didn't do back in the day. But if you have an older house that you're doing repairs on, you might want to check that stuff for asbestos before you come knocking down your walls. But even though it might be asbestos, don't worry about it. Unless you actually disturb it, it's not going to hurt you. It's buried beneath the paint, and it's inside the walls. Unless you actually go bricking down walls, it's not really a threat to you. Alright, we're outside, ready to do the test. After this spent the past week drying and setting up, didn't even need my stabilizing piece of wood. It holds itself. Now, I don't have 2 identical blowtorches, so we're going to do one at a time with a timer. I have this powerful blowtorch here. We're going to start off on the sheetrock, put it there. The other one will be unaffected because they're so far apart. Sheetrock is used in a house as basically a fire block. It's not supposed to burn. Definitely the cardboard will burn, but it's supposed to stop a fire from quite some time. A blowtorch is pretty strong, so it's going to burn through it much faster than a typical house fire. And if a fire starts in your wall, like if anyone who saw my insulation video, it would not just explode like that. The sheetrock is there to snuff that out, so it takes a really long time where it would be noticed and set off a smoke detector way in advance. All right, it's all the way up on high. We're gonna see how long that takes to show a burn mark on the other side. See, sheetrock is supposed to be fireproof. It's only burning the surface, which is cardboard. No sign of it on the other side yet. "30 seconds in. Right there where the blowtorch is, that's where it's gonna start coming through. Cannot even touch it, but I don't see any discoloration yet. And we have a visitor from Mr. Grasshopper. A minute and 3/4. It's getting hotter. 4.5 minutes in, this is what it looks like. A really strong smell. Smells like sulfur. Hard to breathe near that. You don't want to breathe in sheetrock. Other side, nearly 5 minutes. Nothing. You don't see anything. Still really hot in the middle. If I put my nose up to it, if I smell here, nothing. But if I smell here, I can definitely smell something burning. So it's coming. Right here, that's the bullseye right here. Can't even touch it for a second now. Stink. Sheetrock is made from the byproduct of a power plant. Oh, finally! I knew I smelled smoke. See it smoking? Finally made it through to the other side. Now, is it gonna combust in flames? Or is it just gonna smolder like this? That's how long it's been. About 7 minutes. Oh, it's smoking. It's smoking. 7 minutes in. Oh, it's starting to crackle. It's crackling. In the middle, starting to split. Are we gonna start seeing flames? I don't think so. It's just transferring heat at the moment. But as you can see, this would definitely have set off a smoke detector before your room went up. About 8 minutes in since we first put the blowtorch. Look what's happening on the other side, everyone. It looks like a furnace foundry, like when you melt down metal. Look at that bullseye. That is so hot to be able to turn it that color. If I was to take away the blowtorch, it would continue glowing for a while. That's how hot this has become. Just waiting for the other side to combust. Going on 9 minutes. And it's with the other side. It's not glowing yet, but you can see as it's super heating, the sheetrock, it's starting to crack like a desert during a drought. And look at how the edges are just curling open. Approaching the 11-minute mark. The other side, we can start to see the glowing char in the middle of that crack. But as you see, that flame is slowly digging away as it's leaving little ash all over the ground. It's digging. Okay, we're approaching the 14-minute mark at this moment. I think eventually the flame itself is gonna dig its way all the way through because it is slowly getting worse right here. It's a lot of heat. We have a visitor. A grasshopper. And look at that. It's like almost through. Going on 19 minutes. It's still digging a lot. These grasshoppers have a death wish. You saw how close that one just was? We're about to go on 21 minutes. We're gonna end this test. As you can see, the crater is slowly getting deeper until it would make its way to the other side. The back of the wall is not catching fire. This has got to be heat proof. 21 minutes, and we're gonna end this experiment on this side. It's digging a crater deeper and deeper until it would eventually make its way through. But as you see, it does not look like the other side is going to combust. As you see, the smoke has completely stopped. It's not burning anymore for the moment. But that middle there, it will burn my hand from 6 inches away. But look how hot it is right in that crack. Just instantly lights up by touching it. Yep, just like I thought. If it was nighttime, you'd really be seeing that. And as it's cooling down, oh, it's cracking. Because as it's cooling down, it's slowly shrinking. Wow, it's still red. 20 seconds after shutting it down. Whoa, I can't even touch the bricks that were holding it. This whole cavity, these studs are all warm. And now the other side, like I said, it's gonna keep glowing red for a while. Oh, look, it actually did make its way all the way through. But you can definitely see it glowing in there. Let's move on. Now the other side, we're gonna put it the exact same distance and we're gonna give it the same shot. There we go. It has already started burning the wood immediately. After 1 minute, it's still freezing cold to the touch. It's gonna take a while to heat this up. After 2 minutes, I'm starting to feel heat where the blowtorch is, but no visible fire staining. So you can see it's really charring. That wood is already probably compromised all the way through. The plaster here is only dirty from the smoke caused by the wood. Because if you see directly in front of the blowtorch, it's not discolored. It's actually glowing red. The plaster is turning red. If it wasn't for all this sunshine, whoa, look at that, I'm blocking the sun. It's like a furnace. You know, plaster is actually how people make foundries at home. It's starting to get too hot to touch. Just listen to this. Compared to... This noise brings back memories of my childhood, living in an old apartment building from the 20s. It is so hot right here. I bet it's just gonna suddenly crack. Too hot to touch. But so far it's doing a lot better than the sheetrock because it shows no sign. It's really hot, but no sign of anything bad happening. Oh, look at that! The blowtorch made it all the way through to the plaster. I am seriously rooting for the plaster. I personally like that stuff better in a house because of its mold resistance, and it's so much stronger. Those slats of wood give so much structural strength to an older building. Like these new buildings made out of plywood and sheetrock, if they get wet when they become abandoned, they just fall apart. These old buildings, 100 years without being touched, they're still standing up because of this stuff with all its structural strength. Now, on the back side, you can see smoke. At first, I thought maybe that was water vapor, because remember how I was saying it's so cold on a hot day? I thought maybe it was condensation being evaporated, but it's not. The smoke from the wood is somehow penetrating right through this to the other side. 15 minutes. Plaster definitely is the winner. It took 15 minutes for us to finally start to get a small hole of where the blowtorch is about to come through. The one over here was a lot faster. Now, like I said at the beginning, there's no way to make a fair test. All plaster jobs are slightly different thicknesses, slightly different things mixed into it. Okay, we stopped that experiment around 22 minutes. Now it's 22 minutes again, and this one has developed a crack. But as you can see, it's not glowing nearly as much as the other. Still extremely hot, but this one I think is a better fire block. Chip some of this out of the way, and we have plain plaster. Experiment is over. They both had 22 minutes of runtime. This brick is so hot, I bet it'll start smoking the grass when I tip it over. Get that out of the way. Check it out, it's still growing real hot. Look at that. It's so hot when we grab the other end of the stick. We didn't touch it yet. Suddenly fire. This is why people love using plaster to make foundries at home. That is so hot. And look, it didn't damage the studs at all. We can use this for our next experiment someday. Woo! Plaster shatters. See how it just falls right off? These big pieces, well, that's gonna be hot. See that? Just flakes right off. On the other hand, check out sheetrock. See, it doesn't shatter all around it. That's so brittle, that stuff there. But look how strong that is structurally. Sounds like a dinner plate. Really strong. Hope this video was interesting. Thanks for watching.